Chosen one, on August 20th, God confirms that you have passed through the test and now you must move forward. Not because every answer has arrived, but because the test revealed what can remain steady inside you. You have carried questions into ordinary mornings, felt the weight of uncertainty in your shoulders, and wondered whether the long silence meant that you had been forgotten. Yet the deepest test was not simply what happened around you, it was what happened within you, while nothing seemed to change. You were asked to keep your heart clean when disappointment would have made bitterness easier. You were asked to remain honest when pretending strength would have been more convenient. You were asked to keep walking when no visible sign rewarded your obedience. Something in you has been examined, not to shame you, but to reveal what is genuine. If you have sensed that this season mattered, but could not name what it was forming, the 7 principles of C.S. Lewis for the chosen can help you understand the season you are living and recognize the deeper lessons hidden inside it. It is a guide for seeing your waiting with greater clarity, distinguishing fear from direction, and responding to God without panic or passivity. To access the ebook, go now to the top of the comments and click the link in the pinned comment. Now return to this moment, because the confirmation is not permission to become careless. It is an invitation to advance with a quieter and stronger heart. You are not being told to run ahead of wisdom, but to stop allowing yesterday's test to imprison tomorrow's obedience. You may notice the confirmation first in your body, rather than in your thoughts. Your breathing becomes less shallow when you consider moving forward, even though the future still contains unanswered questions. Your hands may no longer reach for your phone with the same desperate need to find proof. You may sit at the edge of your bed and realize that the fear which once controlled every decision has lost some of its authority. This does not mean you feel no sorrow. It means sorrow is no longer the only voice speaking. You remember the nights when sleep came late because your mind kept reviewing every conversation, every closed door, every delay, and every possibility you could not control. You remember carrying yourself through work while your attention remained fixed on what had not happened. The test touched your schedule, your relationships, your confidence, and your ability to rest. Still, you learned to perform small acts of faith when no one applauded. You washed the dishes, answered the message with kindness, completed the responsibility, and chose not to return cruelty for cruelty. Those ordinary choices became evidence that the trial did not own you. This is what it may mean for you to have passed through the test. Not that you were flawless, and not that every hardship has permanently ended, but that the hardship no longer has the same power to define your identity. You can acknowledge what wounded you without building your home inside the wound. You can remember the delay without worshipping the delay. You can admit that you were afraid without allowing fear to become your counselor. The next season may require patience, but it will not require the same helplessness. It may require courage, but courage will not mean denying your limits. It may require movement, but movement will not mean forcing a door that wisdom has not opened. The message of this day is a responsible invitation to examine what the test taught you. You learned that obedience can be quiet. You learned that discernment often grows through repetition. You learned that peace is not always a feeling before a decision. Sometimes it is the steadiness that appears after you choose what is right. And you learned that advancing can begin with one faithful step. Imagine the morning when you almost abandoned the commitment you had made in private. The room was ordinary, the light was weak, and the unfinished task looked larger than your strength. Nothing dramatic happened to motivate you. No voice interrupted the silence. No sudden result proved that your effort mattered. You simply stood, placed your feet on the floor, and did the next honest thing. Perhaps you prepared for work, even though your heart felt discouraged. Perhaps you prayed without beautiful language. Perhaps you refused to send the message that would have reopened an old conflict. Perhaps you took responsibility for something you had avoided, not because you were certain of the outcome, but because you were tired of being divided within yourself. That scene may have seemed insignificant, yet it carried the dignity of a turning point. Tests are often passed in moments that appear too small to deserve a name. The decision to move forward is frequently born in a kitchen, a hallway, a parked car, or the quiet space beside your bed. God's confirmation may come through the character you practice when no one can measure it. You have also been learning to distinguish a genuine transition from emotional exhaustion. Waiting can make every possibility feel urgent, while weariness can make every responsibility feel pointless. You may have asked whether you were supposed to keep holding on, release something, begin again, or simply rest. Those questions are not signs of spiritual failure. They are signs that you have been carrying enough weight to require discernment. The important matter is not to assign a dramatic meaning to every coincidence, but to pay attention to the fruit of your choices. Does a direction make you more truthful, more responsible, more compassionate, and more able to remain at peace with what you cannot control? Or does it make you frantic, proud, suspicious, and dependent on immediate validation? The test did not merely show you what you can endure. It showed you what kind of person you become when certainty is withheld. That knowledge can guide your next step more reliably than a temporary rush of emotion. Many doors may appear before you, but you no longer need to enter every door simply because it is open. There is a particular pain in waiting without knowing whether the waiting means preparation, closure, redirection, rebuilding, or a new beginning. You can spend months interpreting every silence as abandonment, every delay as rejection, and every obstacle as proof that you misunderstood everything. The cost is not only confusion, it is the exhaustion of making decisions from fear. The 7 Principles of C.S. Lewis for the Chosen offers a way to examine that uncertainty with more clarity, organize your prayer, and recognize what kind of season you may be living without turning every detail into a prophecy. Many readers who arrived feeling confused or tired of waiting said the material helped them understand their season more clearly, organize their prayers, or stop interpreting every silence as abandonment. To access the ebook, go now to the top of the comments and click the link in the pinned comment. Then come back to the question beneath your waiting: what has this season been teaching you to release, protect, practice, or begin? You do not need to manufacture an answer, but you can become honest enough to recognize the answer when it becomes clear. The first opposition you face after a test is often the pressure to prove that you have changed. You may feel tempted to make a dramatic announcement, accept every opportunity, or move with such speed that no one can accuse you of being afraid. But urgency is not always courage. Sometimes it is the old fear, wearing a more impressive coat. Comparison can make you believe that you are late because someone else appears to be advancing. Distraction can fill every empty space until you never hear the quieter conviction beneath the noise. Even positive possibilities can become dangerous when you use them to escape the discomfort of discernment. You do not have to prove that you passed by becoming unavailable to rest. You do not have to prove that God is with you by accepting responsibilities that violate wisdom. The test was not designed to turn you into a performer who constantly displays strength. It revealed the difference between a life directed by conviction and a life driven by the need to be seen. As you advance, let your pace be governed by faithfulness rather than by the opinions of people who did not carry what you carried. Consider Joseph, who endured betrayal, displacement, false accusation, and long years in which his integrity did not seem to improve his circumstances. His story does not permit you to romanticize suffering or assume that every delay guarantees a specific earthly reward. Yet it does show that character can remain active in a place that feels like interruption. Joseph learned to serve responsibly in environments he did not choose. He did not wait for a perfect explanation before practicing wisdom in the room where he stood. Your room may be a workplace where you feel overlooked, a home where you are rebuilding trust, or a season where your plans have been reduced to modest duties. The lesson is not that you must silently tolerate injustice forever. The lesson is that a difficult setting does not cancel your capacity to choose integrity today. You can prepare without pretending you know the future. You can forgive without returning to unsafe patterns. You can remain open to movement without despising the ground beneath your feet. Like Joseph, you may discover that the test formed skills and convictions that become useful only after the pressure changes. Ignoring the signal of this season would not bring immediate catastrophe, but it could keep you circling the same internal pattern. You might continue asking for direction while refusing to accept the responsibility already placed in your hands. You might call indecision patience because patience sounds more spiritual. You might keep revisiting a closed relationship because grief feels more familiar than freedom. You might remain attached to an old version of yourself because the unknown demands a new kind of honesty. Over time, these choices can harden your attention. You begin to notice only what confirms your fear and overlook the quiet evidence of growth. The test then becomes a story you repeat rather than a lesson you embody. This is why today's message says advance. Advance does not mean forget. It means carry the wisdom forward instead of carrying the entire weight of the former season. Let the pain inform you without commanding you. Let the disappointment teach you without becoming your name. Let what ended be acknowledged so that what is beginning does not have to compete with a ghost. If you need a simple confirmation that you recognize the threshold without pretending to control the outcome, type the words 888 in the comments and then return to the message. Let it represent a calm acknowledgement that something has been tested, something has been learned, and something in you is ready to move with wisdom. You are not using words to force heaven, and you are not turning a number into a spiritual formula. You are simply giving language to the moment when recognition becomes responsibility. A threshold is not a guarantee of comfort. It is the place where you stop bargaining with what you already know. Perhaps you know that a certain habit must end. Perhaps you know that a conversation requires honesty. Perhaps you know that rest is necessary before movement. Perhaps you know that your next step is small and therefore easy to dismiss. Do not despise the smallness of a faithful beginning. The test was not passed through grand gestures, and your advancement may not begin through one either. It may begin when you stop waiting for permission to obey the truth you have already received. The conflict has also been internal, and naming it can release you from unnecessary shame. You have sometimes confused control with responsibility. You believed that if you analyzed every possibility, anticipated every disappointment, and prepared for every reaction, you could prevent pain from surprising you again. This pattern may have helped you survive difficult moments, but it cannot guide your entire future. Constant control keeps your mind occupied while your heart remains afraid. It makes rest feel irresponsible and trust feel dangerous. You may even have treated uncertainty as an accusation, as though not knowing the outcome meant you had failed to listen. But uncertainty is not always a verdict. Sometimes it is the space in which motives become visible. When outcomes are hidden, you discover whether you are obeying because you love what is right or because you need a guaranteed reward. This is not an invitation to become passive. It is an invitation to separate your assignment from your demand for certainty. Your responsibility is to choose the next faithful action. The outcome belongs outside the reach of your hands. Recognition alone is no longer enough, because you now need a way to translate insight into daily decisions. When the message touches your heart, but your schedule remains unchanged, the old pattern eventually returns. The 7 Principles of C.S. Lewis for the Chosen can serve as a practical companion for reflection, prayer, discernment, and identifying the next faithful step when fear urges you to react. It can help you slow down long enough to ask what is truly required, what belongs to the past, and what deserves patient attention today. You can use its perspective when you are tempted to confuse panic with urgency or passivity with trust. To access the ebook, go now to the top of the comments and click the link in the pinned comment. Then take the next step without demanding that one decision explain your entire future, because faithful direction often becomes clearer while you are walking. The test taught you how to endure uncertainty. Now let wisdom teach you how to act within it. Your mind, body, and spirit may respond to the same decision in different ways. Your mind can list practical reasons, compare risks, and imagine consequences. Your body may tighten when an old fear recognizes a familiar situation, even when the situation itself is no longer the same. Your spirit may quietly recognize a responsibility that does not feel glamorous, but carries a deep sense of truth. None of these signals should be worshipped or ignored. A bodily reaction deserves compassion, but it may reflect memory rather than direction. A logical argument deserves attention, but it may be built to protect you from every possible discomfort. Spiritual recognition is not usually theatrical. It can appear as a persistent clarity that survives sleep, distraction, and the changing moods of the day. Bring the whole person into discernment. Write down what you know, notice what your body is communicating, and pray over the motive beneath the choice. Then ask whether the decision moves you toward honesty, responsibility, love, and peace. The answer may not remove all fear, but it can show you which voice deserves the final word. Your relationships and environments will also reveal whether you are advancing wisely. Some people may celebrate your growth only when it remains convenient for them. Others may resist the boundaries that make your life healthier because your former availability benefited them. This does not mean you should suspect everyone or isolate yourself behind spiritual language. Discernment is not a license to become cold. It is the ability to love people without surrendering your conscience. Notice how you feel after conversations. Are you consistently diminished, confused, and pressured to betray what you know is right? Or are you being invited into accountability, patience, and greater maturity? A trustworthy relationship can challenge you without controlling you. A necessary boundary can be firm without being cruel. You are allowed to change the rhythm of access while keeping compassion in your heart. Advancing may involve a new conversation, a different schedule, a smaller circle, or a healthier way of saying no. The question is not who deserves punishment. The question is what arrangement allows truth to remain alive in you. The opposition often succeeds through ordinary noise rather than dramatic temptation. Fatigue makes a small compromise seem harmless. Delay makes a meaningful responsibility feel unnecessary. Endless information makes wisdom difficult to hear. You can spend an evening moving between messages, videos, tasks, and worries, then wonder why prayer feels distant. Lesser urgencies crowd out the one matter that requires your deepest attention. Even the desire to be helpful can become a way of avoiding the decision you know you must make. The enemy of movement is not always an obvious refusal. Sometimes it is a life so crowded that you never reach the point of choosing. Your attention is being shaped every day by what you repeatedly permit into your mind. If you want to advance, protect a portion of your day from noise. Let your phone remain untouched for a few minutes. Sit with the question before searching for someone else's answer. Give your conscience time to speak in complete sentences. What is sacred in you may not shout over the noise. It may wait until the noise is lowered. A turning point arrives when you stop negotiating with the truth connected to this day. You no longer ask whether you are allowed to release what has already ended. You no longer demand that the person who hurt you understand your healing before you begin it. You no longer require a perfect emotional feeling before taking a responsible step. The question changes from "what if I am wrong" to "what is the most honest response with what I know now?" That question does not make you reckless. It makes you present. You can remain humble and still move. You can remain teachable and still decide. You can remain tender and still close a door that repeatedly harmed your peace. Passing through the test means you have gathered enough truth to stop pretending that confusion is your only option. You may still need counsel, time, and prayer, but you are no longer empty-handed. There is wisdom in your memory, evidence in your character, and a quiet authority born from having endured without becoming what wounded you. Let that authority serve love rather than fear. Now imagine one sustained image. A lamp kept in a narrow room through a long night. Its flame is not loud, and it does not illuminate the entire road outside. It simply gives enough light for the next honest movement. At first, you may believe the lamp is too small to matter. You look toward the darkness beyond the window and wish for a brightness that would remove every question. Yet the flame remains, and because it remains, you can see the table, the doorway, the steps beneath your feet, and the object you need to carry. This is what the test may have preserved in you. It did not give you complete visibility. It protected a living light of conscience, faith, and discernment, while circumstances remained dim. The room was not your final destination, but it was where your eyes learned to adjust. The night did not prove that the flame had failed. It revealed how much guidance can exist without spectacle. You are being invited to trust the light that helps you take the next step, not to demand a floodlight for the entire journey. The lamp was formed through care you could not always see. Oil had to be gathered, the wick had to be trimmed, and the flame had to be protected from careless movement. In the same way, your inner steadiness was formed through repeated choices that seemed too ordinary to deserve spiritual significance. You learned to return to prayer after disappointment. You learned to tell the truth when a lie would have protected your image. You learned to rest before making a decision that fatigue had distorted. You learned to let a trusted person correct you without interpreting correction as rejection. These practices were not wasted because they produced no immediate celebration. They were preparing your attention. A flame does not become trustworthy because it burns dramatically for a moment. It becomes trustworthy because it remains tended. Your life has required tending. Some days the light felt weak, but weak is not the same as extinguished. Some days you prayed only a few honest words, yet those words kept the room from becoming completely dark. The hidden work mattered even when you could not measure it. The room also contained drafts. A door opened suddenly, a harsh word disturbed the air, or a careless decision brought the flame close to danger. There were seasons when disappointment seemed to blow directly against your faith. You may have wondered whether your endurance was foolish, whether your kindness made you vulnerable, or whether your restraint simply meant that you were afraid to act. The flame was not protected by pretending the wind did not exist. It was protected by learning where to stand, when to close the door, and how to shield what was still alive. This is why some limits became necessary. Not every person could remain close to the tenderest parts of your life. Not every conversation deserved an immediate response. Not every opportunity deserved your energy. The test taught you that preservation is not cowardice. Sometimes wisdom looks like stepping away from the draft so that your light can continue. You are not required to expose your deepest convictions to every passing wind. You can remain generous without becoming careless. Then slowly, the flame begins to change the room. You notice the doorway without pretending the doorway is the destination. You see the path that was always there, but was hidden by your fear. You recognize that movement does not begin when darkness disappears. It begins when light becomes sufficient for obedience. Your hand reaches for the coat, the letter, the key, or the task that belongs to the next morning. You do not know every street beyond the house. You do not possess a guarantee that every person will understand your decision. But the small light reveals enough. The test has not made you omniscient. It has made you less willing to abandon what is true simply because the future remains partly concealed. The lamp moves with you, not because you control it, but because you have learned to carry it responsibly. Your advancement is not a theatrical escape from all difficulty. It is a faithful departure from paralysis. You can leave the room with tenderness for the person you were inside it. You can carry the lesson without carrying the night. Perhaps you recognize the lamp now as the quiet truth that remained when excitement faded, when applause disappeared, and when familiar plans stopped working. It was the part of you that still knew kindness mattered. It was the conviction that refused to let resentment become your identity. It was the willingness to begin again without demanding that the new beginning erase the old pain. If this image meets you, type the words, "I am ready" in the comments, and then return to the narration. Let the phrase mean that you are ready for the next faithful step, not that you claim control over every result. You are ready to stop calling fear wisdom merely because fear speaks with detail. You are ready to stop calling passivity patience when love requires action. You are ready to receive correction, honor limits, and move at a pace that keeps your character intact. The light does not ask you to pretend the road is easy. It asks you to walk honestly through the portion of road you can see. When you return from the image, the message becomes simple without becoming shallow. You have passed through the test in the sense that you are no longer required to become the person the test tried to produce through pressure. You can choose who you will be now. You can advance without revenge, without frantic announcements, and without making your progress dependent on someone else's regret. The next chapter may still contain ordinary problems. Bills may still require attention, conversations may still require courage, and your body may still need rest. Spiritual maturity does not remove practical responsibility. It changes the spirit in which you meet it. You are no longer waiting for pain to certify your worth. You are no longer asking delay to tell you whether you matter. You are allowed to move because truth has become clear enough for movement. Let your obedience be quiet enough to remain sincere. Let your boundaries be kind enough to remain human. Let your hope be strong enough to endure without making promises that only time can reveal. Your first practice is to create a pause between recognition and reaction. When a message arrives that triggers fear, do not answer from the first wave in your body. Place the